Well, greetings everyone, and welcome to a very special online event today. It's called Experience Multidimensional Medical Intuition, Clear Ancestral Patterns and Pain Through Scanning, Somatic Listening, and Symbolic Dialogue. My name is Stephen Dyna. I'm the founder and president of the Shift Network, and I love going deep down rabbit holes of new possibilities for understanding ourselves and our evolution, how we heal, how we manifest our greatest gifts. And we're going to get to explore some of the further reaches of medical intuition today with one of the world's leaders in this field. Her name is Skylar Acamesis. She's a master medical intuitive. We recently did a 7-week course with Skylar, got great feedback, super excited. People had really profound experiences and also built real skills. And so we're very excited that she's going to actually come back and do a full 12-week advanced course soon that we'll share more about towards the end of the hour. But I think it's just really apparent that Skylar is committed to opening up this everything that she's learned and sharing in a way that helps other people access these gifts as well. So Skylar, thanks so much for coming back.
Thank you so much, Stephen. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Great. Well, I know that you shared a little bit about your backstory last time, but it's always good for those who haven't been exposed to you. Share a little bit more about how you got into medical intuition, and particularly this more multidimensional version of it that you have started sharing with the Shift Network.
I got into it through my own personal health issues. I was diagnosed with an underactive thyroid slash Hashimoto's at the age of 10. And I think that diagnosis, especially that I would never get better, really remember like that inner child aspect in me being like, this just cannot be true. You know, that shock response. And that deep desire for there to be an answer and not being able to find it in the normal places was really what started driving me to question the universe instead of just question science. And really, like, I think it's probably the first time I felt my soul and my heart really looking for answers. And then I managed to reverse my thyroid and my Hashimoto's by the time I was in my early 20s. But that's also when I had like a major spiritual awakening. And that was a big part of what returned me to health. And I think people can really sense that. They can just really sense that, I think, on like through the law of resonance. And people started asking me to help them. And I think I remember being very scared of potentially doing more harm than good or promising things that I couldn't deliver when I wasn't actually promising anything at all. At that point, I was in complete hiding. But I still remember that was like that deep imposter fear was there. And then moving out of that into really mastering my gifts, first as an angel healer, then as a theta healer, and then really moving into medical intuition, first through theta. And then when theta healing, which is created by Vanna Steibel, and then when COVID hit, because I specialized in health for a long time in that modality, and that modality actually wasn't available online at all. That's when suddenly my clinic was overrun. And I was also heavily pregnant with my first son. So it wasn't like I could go out and start healing people without putting his life at risk. And that's when I really got into teaching medical intuition instead of just practicing it. And it's when I started to share my own techniques instead of just other people's, because that's when I really wanted to be freely available. And I really realized that people needed that autonomy, they needed that sovereignty, they needed that power. So that was like where it became like, that's going to be almost my niche, as it were. That's going to be my thing. But it also became where there was just so much practice. There were just so many people who were suffering so much. And it was also interesting because before I'd only ever worked on illnesses that other people had worked on. But because COVID was also like a new variation of a virus, it really made you fly solo, like really rely on your own scans, on your own interpretations on what was really coming through, which really, really built my self-trust. But that's how it began and where it went and how it kind of really became strong.
Mm. Well, let's dive into a little bit of the deeper understanding what multidimensional medical intuition means. And I guess from my perspective, it's like there's this one level of just being able to diagnose what's going on in the body, and then there's another level of like what are the sort of things that flowed into that over this lifetime and sometimes others, and maybe share a little bit about how you can start to open up those deeper layers of understanding of what's behind medical issues or challenges.
Cracks in the multidimensional door opened really early, long, like literally when I just started doing angel healing, like after my first angel healing course with Doreen Virtue. The first lady who ever really asked me to heal like a serious physical thing. And I remember I was really young. I was like 21 and I was shaking in my boots, but she had a hole in her heart. And I remember saying to her, I don't know, what's going to happen, but we're just going to do the process and then see what happens. And when we literally, went into that divine energy and opened up the root, the hole in her heart had been caused by her being crucified. And when she was up on the cross, one of the soldiers had popped the hole with the spear, and releasing the intense amount of energetic grief, but also of release. It was it was an insanely profound experience. But then she actually invited me to be on Skype when she was having the surgery that was supposed to close the hole. And previously, they were just sealing the hole. So they were putting I don't know what it's called, but one of those like plastic things inside the hole just to seal it. And after we did the healing, when they opened her up, the hole was so small, they just put like 4 or 5 stitches in and then it was gone. And I remember realizing that like so much of what is manifesting in the body now often isn't even from personal experiences in this lifetime. And also my very best friend growing up, he had spina bifida, and I deeply, deeply wanted to help him around his suffering. His feet made it very hard for him to walk, and we used to walk for miles together. And whenever he took his boots off, his foot was always bleeding and blistered. And I remember really praying about it and asking and having these dreams, which now, years and years later, I was only like 16 at the time, but years later, I know that there were past life responses. The dreams were so strong of me and him in battle together, and him being crushed by one of the battle carts, like his foot being crushed by one of the battle carts. And then the spina bifida manifesting almost lifetime after lifetime, because I remember like trying to pull him out. And I literally remember in that lifetime dragging him home. And I remember like really having a lot of survivor's guilt and saying to him, I'm really sorry, it's not fair that this happened to you and it didn't happen to me. And I still remember his response, because it's crazy that many lifetimes later, but I remember him saying to me, it's the best thing that ever happened. I'm never going to have to murder anybody again. And that vow really locked in. You could see how it was protecting him lifetime after lifetime in ways. But those, like, what's when I realized there was a past to this. And you have to understand, I didn't believe in past lives at that stage of my existence, but that opened like the past life multidimensional door. And when I worked with disabled children, because I volunteered a lot with disabled children in my teens, I kept back then it was just dreams. I kept having dreams of experiences they'd had before. And then when I got into working on illness after illness, actually in my practice, that's when I started really seeing parallel lives and future lives really causing illness. I often saw fear of having children be abused, or having your children taken away be the reason for current infertility. I often saw when I was doing the body scan that fear of like losing work or losing power was the reason for like wanting to like leave the planet early, so like manifesting a heart attack or an accident or something like that. There were often future instances like a divorce, which would sabotage somebody from even wanting to have like a career change that they could energetically sense. And that's when I was going, wait a minute, it's not just the past causing disease or distortion in the body, the future's also causing this. And the parallel lives came in when I was working on people's heart attacks, because people were often trying to reverse heart attacks or heart disease. And if you don't know this, scientifically speaking, there's a very high level of people having heart attacks or heart disease who are having severe relationship issues, whether it's divorces or affairs or separations, etc., which I didn't know then. but it would come up in the healing sessions that they were choosing between one person and another, or they were choosing one destiny versus another, and their heart was almost torn in two. And it's like that lifetime is pulling them, and this lifetime is pulling them. And that's actually when I realized that death doors pulled people, just like the birth, like as a portal energetically pushes in the spiral. So the death door pulls the person through these different destinies. And I was like, there's the past is pushing them, the future is pulling them, and then the parallel lives are almost causing this momentum. And I could see that it's, and I'm not good at physics, but what I could see was almost like the different laws interacting together, so that they would always be in motion towards like learning or manifesting specific lessons. But that's the heart disease that really taught me that parallel lives were having an influence, and also fertility. So when I was working deeply, because I created a program around fertility at the very beginning, because I had fertility issues. And when I was working on that, it, like different children, it was so powerful. Different children were um, calling on their parents, obviously creating completely different lifelines, creating different lessons, different destinies. But what was even more interesting was when I was working on menopause, which is we're going to talk about with the masterclass, was that as the number of eggs inside the ovary decreased, obviously the number of physical manifestations of a child's soul completely changed. And it was really interesting how the energy of those particular souls were directly impacting the mother's physiology all the way from postpartum through menopause, through the final seasons. Like literally the unborn children were changing the mother's physiology actively because they already had their bodies inside her. And when she decided that that wasn't going to be a door they were birthing through, their energy was withdrawing. That blew my mind. I was like, I don't.
That's mind blowing. I have not heard that before of like the unborn souls like actually directly influencing the physiology. Already you're sort of popping our paradigm open in some new ways. I want to ask you also about inherited trauma, since that's something we said we would talk about, where it's passed down from a lineage as well. And how does that show up for you in what you're seeing with medical intuition?
It shows up really often because so much of what, especially nowadays with chronic disease, so much of what we're seeing with chronic illness literally represents repetitive, like looped patterns over and over again, both in the family line, but also in behaviors that are still repeating, um, particularly patterns around misogyny, racism, colonialism. It comes in so strong when you're trying to resolve issues that are like entrenched or deep, and they're talking to you. I was literally speaking to a client yesterday who wanted to resolve PCOS, and during the scan I could literally, as she was talking, her face almost completely shape shifted, and it wasn't her face, it was her father's face, and his words were literally like coming out of her mouth, and you could like energetically I could see the enmeshment, and then I could literally see I could see like the trauma, I could see the alienation, I could see the pattern of controlling the child in order to keep the family together, so that because energetically he didn't know how to create real love with the mother, so it's a pattern of trying to control the relationship with the child. And it comes in so many different ways. Like, for example, I see it a lot with diabetes as well, where there's been a lot, like the joy of life has been lost through being forced through duty to take on work that you never really felt in your soul. It's just you must provide, or you must meet a specific academic standard. It's a lot when I work with Indian people or Chinese people, and it's just so strong with so many different illnesses. Um, I would say at least 50% of illnesses are genetic, so it makes sense that they're being inherited. And going back to what we were saying, like about the eggs inside the womb, especially, eggs are inside the womb of the grandmother. So the patterns that they literally lived their whole life inside their grandmother's womb. And then they lived the mother's whole life from when she was born. So all of those experiences are energetically imprinted inside their sacral chakra in the mother line, often also in their heart line. So when you're doing work on illnesses, especially if they haven't realized it's not their energy, their body was not designed to process other people's energy. That's just your body's designed to process your energy and the energy of your soul. When you're running other people's energy, and it's actually quite a common soul vow to heal all the ancestral trauma, particularly if you've been like a shaman or a witch or a healer many times over, because that was believed to be the divine life purpose. And it's actually a distortion. The truth is that it's that divine energy that can heal all the wounds inside the family, not you. But if you believe that it's your job, you energetically take it on extra as well. When you're literally channeling that much energy, especially negative energy that's come down generation after generation, it's really heavy on the body, and that it makes sense that it causes disease.
Mm. So in some ways, the energy that's inherent is needing to have some outpicturing or needing to be transformed somehow. So how do you sort of begin to unravel like how to transform it? I mean, obviously when there's some powerful experience like the spear through the heart, it's like just bringing that into full awareness and going through it. But share a little bit about like what's required to actually resolve the energy that is being propelled through somebody's body and incarnation.
You normally have to dialogue with the part that was inside the original wound. So you normally see me guiding people when I do the healing demonstrations into like a really strong divine energy field, or like a bubble of like divine love. Because that dialogue has to take place without recreating the trauma, or like basically setting it going again. But when you're actually in communication with the part that was hurt or create, you start to see, and it's really difficult for healers. We really want to bypass this bit and get to the whole forgiveness, unconditional love bit. But that presence with the patterns and the lies that we believed were truth during the pain is really important, because we think we know what we believe, but most of us have no idea what we believe. And it's not a conscious decision to have those beliefs, especially when it's ancestral, or especially when it's like early childhood, or even inside in the womb. So what we're creating then is an unconscious creation. And that presence with what that wounded bit believes tells you the program that is currently creating the disease. And it gives you the ability to start to replace the distortions or the lies that were believed with truth. So for example, like when you we're saying like, how do you transmute that particular emotion or that particular pattern? You have to have believed that it's your job to take care of your entire lineage. For that to happen, you first have to believe that there isn't a divine energy doing that. Therefore, you have been left this job entirely. So it's like an abandonment by God energy that needs to be processed, like normally a really deep grief or separation from the divine. And then there's the element of, most wounded cells believe that the feelings are dangerous, because they, as a child, the distortion normally is, my dad was angry, therefore he is abusive, and the child blames the anger, versus understanding that the anger is an emotion that when felt appropriately becomes courage, and then becomes integrity, right? But the kid thinks the anger is the issue, so then they can't feel a feeling that gets locked in their body and then becomes inflammation and causes all sorts of problems. But the lie is that the feeling is the problem, versus the inability to have the courage to be present with how you authentically are in the presence of suffering, right? So there's these distortions that we deeply believe are true. The other one that I think is very powerful, that a lot of people come to me with, particularly with things like viruses like Epstein or MS, um, or like long viruses that just don't seem to go away, is that they really deeply believe that they are weak. And they will say to you, I'm not strong enough for this. And it's a lie. If you look at how strong they are, like they're the kind of people that have gone through everything imaginable and still come out kind and capable and courageous. Like the distortion is that they are weak. The truth is that they are unconditionally strong. And when that returns, so does their health, right? But there's a complete, we're almost like back to Course in Miracles concept. There's a complete flip in consciousness from everything in my experience makes me weak to everything that I have gone through was designed to make me stronger, was working for me. even when I didn't understand how that was working, right? So we genuinely believe lies when we go through traumatic experiences. The meanings that we give to those experiences often have no connection with the universal truths or the higher laws of consciousness. And when we are running lies through our physical body, diseases can't help but manifest because we're not creating harmony. The body literally sings. And when you're running programs that are out of harmony, they're out of tune almost. You can literally hear the organs being out of tune.
Hmm. You have such a profound way of looking at these things, and we haven't really talked a little bit about how you open to the level of information and clear seeing that you're getting in terms of being able to diagnose and then go into these other multidimensional layers, because it's quite a sophisticated metaphysical understanding, and there's also the entry point of just like how do you start to assess and connect with the deeper story.
I think like there's a mix of like destiny and this sincere desire to know the truth. And I think that's one of the best things that I learned through my teachers was always asking for the truth versus like confirmation of what I was getting. I was always asking for the truth. And I think that gave me answers I wasn't looking for. And it opened me up to things that like with the like future souls affecting people's health, that things I wasn't looking for, answers I wouldn't have necessarily thought were true. Even like genetics, I was really raised to believe that you couldn't change genetics. And when I was really shown that it could be done, and then I think it was 4 or 5 years after that to be, to have Bruce Lipstein's work come out and really confirm it was really insanely powerful. I had a similar experience with my best friend because we were talking about hormones and perimenopause, and she was asking me whether she should go on birth control pills or things like that. And the answer was so strong. It was like, bioidentical hormones are much better than birth control pills. I don't understand that stuff to that level. Then 3 or 4 days later, there was an interview released around the science, and it just literally showed that the hormones that are not bioidentical, the ones that used in birth control pills, etc., do not create the same regulatory hormones that make you feel good, that bring you peace, that bioidentical hormones do.
Hmm.
So it's often like a spontaneous response. But in the beginning, I had a spontaneous spiritual awakening in response to like a Reiki session. That was how my spiritual awakening happened. And then the first year after that, because I started seeing colors and guides and energies very, very strongly. And I thought I was going bonkers. I literally thought I was going bonkers because before then I was a normal law student. I was studying law. I didn't have any beliefs in the metaphysical whatsoever. And then I had this big opening up, I think, of my clairvoyance skills and my clairsentient skills. And I had to figure out how to switch it on and off. And that made me really start studying in depth different spiritual paths. And that's when I really got into Course in Miracles. So I think Course in Miracles, like 4 or 5 years of really doing that every day, really does train your consciousness in a specific way. I think that really opened me up to, like you said, the bigger metaphysical pictures, but also being open to layers of how things are interconnected. Because my brain, especially through like the legal world and even like through nutrition and things like that, was very much programmed to see things as separate. And I really understand where my students are coming from, because nowadays they really often beg me for like one root cause or one root issue. And I'm constantly explaining that disease is a system,
Hmm.
right? They're like, no, just give me one thing. And I'm like, it's weird. Like,
Our brains do crave that simplicity. So you like symptom, cause, fix, and so it sounds like the real story is much more multidimensional.
the real story is much more multidimensional. And my experience was forced, and I was really forced into it. Was very much sink or swim. It wasn't like somebody gave me the option of, do you want to come to this class? It was really, do you want help, like with a Reiki session, to sleep through the night, because I was struggling so much with my health, to everything was switched on. And part of my spiritual awakening was that the first year after I woke up was I kept having these past life memories come up in my dreams. So I would go to sleep and I'd have these past life regressions in my sleep, almost like a life review. And I had a very stoic spiritual teacher at that point in time. And I would be like freaking out and be like, what do I do? How do I respond? And he'd be like, you do nothing. You like stay at peace. You do nothing. You just witness. And I would be like, how is this guy expecting me to do nothing and just witness? And he was like, he would just literally put his hand over his eyes and say, remain detached at all costs. And I would be like, I don't understand what you're saying. How can you be detached? Like, this is like, it's the most intense thing I've ever experienced. And he would just say, like, remain detached. And it's really good advice, but it was so hard to follow. I was so young and it was such an intense experience. But it, I think this is the power of the law of experience, is that experiences change you and they are enough. Like processing and releasing or doing those life reviews, for whatever reason, my soul took that on at that time, just changed how I made decisions, and it deepened my compassion and it made me move differently inside the world. So he was completely correct. It was what was the experience was more than enough.
Hmm.
But I think for a lot of people with multidimensional stuff, they don't have the experience. So then it's like, why would you go to that multidimensional element? And the reality is there's no separation. It's not like there's the physical element and the multidimensional element. They are deeply, deeply intertwined. Just like the breath is with the body, you can't have one without the other. You are not a human being. You are a metaphysical being. So when you're asking like for the truth about illness, we think we're asking about symptomology or the deficiency, but when you're asking that divine energy, it's like, no, it's part of your beingness, and you've forgotten that multidimensional aspect of who you are.
Hmm. Profound insights. I know you're gonna would take us on an experiential journey into a particular pattern for each of us from our ancestral roots, and maybe before you do that, just share a little bit about how the areas where symptoms appear in the body can kind of help to open up this portal to more deeper understanding of our lineage and ancestry and ultimately our true self.
I think the most, for me, the most powerful aspect of doing like what I call a karmic loop healing or an ancestral loop healing is recognizing that it's not personal. So much of illness is that we're identified with our pain. And when you see many people having suffered as much as you, that breaks the isolation. So another way that disease consciousness gets its hook into you is that it isolates you by making you think you're the only one that's ever suffered that much, and you're the only one that ever will understand what you are going through. Whereas with clearing like painful loops that run in family lines, when you are able to know that it's, number one, a shared experience, number two, you're not alone in that level of suffering. Many people, not just in your lineage, but across many family systems, which is also a really amazing thing to do, is look at different family systems, have experienced that. And then I think that is what culminates in, I think, the ultimate ending to the pain and the trauma, is that not just that many people have walked through it and borne the same burden, but that many people have come out the other side. And that path is like been walked by often thousands. And that gives you a lot of courage and a lot of stability, because it's no longer like you're creating or carving your own path with like nails. I think that unconditional support of the ancestors comes in, as opposed to you cursing them for giving this inherited shit to you, right? Pardon my language. So I think that helps a lot. And I think there's also often very big hidden truths that come to your awareness. So it stops being just something that's annoying you. And then it starts being like a sort of purpose that needs to be expressed so you can fully be your authentic self.
Hmm. Beautiful insights. And so let's do the experiential that you wanted to do with the group here. So why don't you go ahead and tee that up and let's practice together.
Okay, sounds like a plan. I'm just gonna just quickly tune in because I can see a lot of people lighting up like Christmas trees. So anybody that's like already been triggered by everything that we've been talking about, just take a few deep breaths for me. Let's just start to release everything up into the light so that we can just trust that anything that you want addressed is already being addressed by the vortex, so that we can open up to really doing a healing in your lineage and your ancestral line. Okay, so just taking a deep breath in, holding it for a moment and exhaling slowly. And with each breath, just allowing yourself to sink deeper into that state of peace, that deep, unconditional peace. Just going deeper and deeper. And then imagining a golden light forming above your head, a pure, warm energy that radiates down, surrounding your entire body. For some of you, it's familiar. For some of you, it's new. It calms your mind, soothes your body, and guides you into the deepest levels of divine peace. And when you're in that deep, deep, unconditional light of divine love, just letting it saturate into every cell, every molecule, just letting it seal your auric field and remove anybody that's not supposed to be in your field. Some of you have a lot of people here. There we go. I just want you to imagine yourself standing before a great archway made of golden light. And it's a doorway to your soul's past, the entrance to the timeline where a core wound has been repeated many times across your family's lifelines. And above the archway, the words form the timeline of my core family wounds. Beside the archway stand the Lords of Time and the Lords of Karma, and they're here to oversee the journey under the law of grace and ensure that you receive only the lessons needed and release all the distortions and the distruths that no longer serve you. But just take a moment to receive their wisdom and protection. They're new to some of you as well. Some of you have met them before. For some of you, they're new. And when you're ready, just step through the archway, feeling yourself dissolving the illusion of time, the illusion of separation. And on the other side, you see 3 paths ahead. Each path leads to a different ancestral experience where that family wound shaped your entire family system. When you're ready, you tune into the first path and you receive the information about that lifetime where that wound first appeared. It may come in the form of a feeling. It may come in the form of a crystal or a gift. It may just come in the knowing or like a movie playing out inside your mind. Just allow yourself to receive. And then when you're ready, just tuning into the next lifeline. Trusting that it might come as a gift. It might come as a seeing, as a knowing, as a feeling. Just allowing yourself to receive the second wound that runs in your family system. I can feel some of you just wanting to heal them. Just right now, we're just being present with them. And then we're moving into the third timeline. Just tuning into that and allowing yourself to receive that knowledge or that knowing or that vision. Of how this wound was created. You see the Lords of Karma step forward and the laws of time step forward now. offering you a full review of these lifetimes. They show you what was learned, what remains unresolved, and what can now be transmuted under the law of grace. You feel the Lords of Karma offer you in your family line karmic absolution and resolution. And as they speak, you allow the law of wisdom to fully integrate into your family's lifeline. You see the energies around these 3 wounds being undone in all directions of time. And if it feels in alignment, you give permission under the law of grace for a full karmic absolution for these 3 wounds to take place along your family lines and family systems. And you see the remaining cords of attachment to these wounds dissolving as these light beings work on your family lines and family systems in all directions of time. And there's nothing you have to do except relax and breathe and allow something bigger than you to move patterns that are bigger than you. And you see waves and waves of golden crystalline light washing over your family systems and lifeline. You release the desire to make sense of the miraculous. And as the lifetimes fade into golden dust, you hear the words, "This is completed, we are free." The time loop is closed. I am whole, I am healed. And slowly, you begin to return to your present self. You feel the golden light surrounding you, bringing you back into the moment, fully renewed. And I'm gently going to count from 1 to 10 to just really ground everybody. And as I do, you just gently awaken, fully integrated and empowered. 1, feeling yourself anchoring back into your physical body. 2, bringing back all the wisdom and feeling lighter. 3, aura fully cleared. 4, your soul is strong, whole, and free. 5, gently wriggling your fingers and your toes. 6, feeling awake and present. 7, fully refreshed. 8, opening your eyes. 9, fully grounded. And 10, you're back and fully embodied.
Well, thank you, Skylar. That was really beautiful, and I appreciate being able to go into multiple different lifetimes and things that are influencing our current reality. How do you recommend that we continue to kind of work and unfold that over time?
Part of what we're going to be diving into in advanced, but patterns, particularly around family systems or cultural systems, tend to work in 3s. So it's either 3, 6, 9, goes all the way up to 13. They create different types of loops or lessons as we're trying to master something, because mastery is created through repetition, right? But the next step after like awareness and allowing those energies to start to move is to really, number 1, follow your divine guidance, because you will be given specific steps unique to your family to take to kind of really start to release what's coming up for you. And there is no family that's the same. It's like there are no 2 people that are the same. And then the other parts of it is that you have to be willing to see your family and yourself differently. We're often very attached to seeing what's wrong with our families, or with the belief that our families will never change. So just being willing to let go of your understanding of what's possible, that really allows those beings to kind of work faster in the background. We're often very stuck in like our beliefs about other people. So just letting go of our judgment as much as possible so that we can see different and allow different versions of reality. So we can do that quantum jump, as it were, to really receive what we've been asking for.
Mm. I was struck earlier. I really loved your formulation of this sort of anger transmuted into courage, transmuted into integrity. Like, is there sort of a parallel process with these inherited ancestral traumas in our bloodline as well?
Every trauma, like every wound becomes wisdom, right? That's the alchemy of life. And absolutely both through every emotion, but also through every like spiritual virtue, there is a progression from what I call the unconscious birth of a virtue, like I said, with anger. All of us have experienced being able to tell a truth or speak a truth when we're angry that we just couldn't get out any other way, right? Whether it was through embarrassment or through sadness or through not being able to accept something about ourselves or the other person, or not being able to accept the consequence of that truth. All of us have experienced anger allowing us to express parts of ourselves that we wish weren't true, but are actually part of our true authentic expression. Right. And in the presence, this is back to like the law of presence, in the presence of that, it goes into like, what Shakespeare said, to thine own self be true. Most people have no idea who they are because they're not taking the time to really be present with what's coming up for them. They're so attached to who they were, they're not really being present with what's happening now. And anger progresses to courage and then progresses through to integrity. Jealousy progresses through standards. It literally teaches you what standards and values you have for yourself, for your life, for your behavior, what you truly desire for yourself and for the world, and then progresses into almost like what I like to call in like unconditional giving, because you're able to see that everything that's being demonstrated to you is already available, already manifest. But in the beginning, it's this. I can see it with my sons in particular, because they're really small, and one of them's just coming out of the toddler year and one of them's going in, but they just want what the other one has constantly, right? Because it comes from this not enoughness energy, and you see it starting to progress even now into this collaboration and then this overflow, these moments of harmony, right? But every single I organize it through the 7 sins. I kid you not. That's how I energetically organize it. So I literally look at it as those as like the ways that we're the most disconnected from our divine self. So anger is wrath, right? Jealousy is envy. And then you go through the other ones, the ways that we literally try to replace our own divine connection on earth. But all of them progress from a distortion like anger, which is it's out of control. You know it's there, but it's unconscious. You can't control it. It explodes. It's same thing with jealousy, same thing with greed, same thing with gluttony. The core around like the beginning of like the shadow is it's out of your control and you were unwilling to take responsibility for it. So there's like there's dissociation, there's projection, there's transference, there's this almost like bargaining or grieving process that it even exists within you because you don't want the shadow to exist. That's all humans go through, that wrestling with their own shadow self. And then as you reach acceptance, right? It's like that standard stage of grief. You're able to see the wisdom that's in each and every one. I think for like discipline's another very powerful virtue that I see a lot of people learn. So a lot of people really struggle with motivation and with control. And it's so interesting that discipline and practice become like literally starts off as control and perfectionism and um, often greed, like this deep desire to have more or to be more than other people, transforms into freedom, right? Freedom to move your body in different ways, freedom to have unconditional abundance, free him to have levels of understanding and spiritual autonomy that you can't have without it. There are things you can achieve through discipline and practice that simply are not available unless you develop the emotional and spiritual musculature. But
Mhm.
it starts off with this intense control and perfectionism and this, you know, almost forcing of yourself to let go of what you think you really are.
Mm.
But shadows are like that. That's one of the reasons I like them so much. But then I am a Scorpio, so just so you know.
Well, your perspective is very, very deep and very liberating as well. And I like how each symptom or disease or lineage challenge becomes a portal into a deeper spiritual awakening and integration and wholeness. And so this transmutation of the sins into virtues and into the reconnection with our divine truth. Really beautiful, Skylar. So thank you for everything you've been sharing. Now I think is a good time to talk more explicitly about your upcoming advanced program because it's going to be a deep dive into the different dimensions of this work, the personal transformation that is available to each person, and also an understanding on a more metaphysical level of how humanity is transforming. And so learning how to do the skills of medical intuition is also a portal into your own higher templates. So Skylar's going to be teaching this advanced program that's building upon the previous 7-week program. And for those of you who joined the 12-week who weren't in the 7-week, you'll have an opportunity to catch up and do all of the 7-week as well. So we'll share about that. But the new groundbreaking course is called Multidimensional Medical Intuition, Scanning and Clearing Across Timelines to Heal Trauma, Ancestral Imprints, and Soul Contracts. You can find it at the URL multidimensionalmedicalintuition.com, which is a bit of a mouthful, but it should be linked there, multidimensionalmedicalintuition.com. It's, as I said, a 12-week program that's building upon the previous 7-week program. And Skylar, I'd love for you to share in your own words some of your intentions for what people are going to come away from this advanced multidimensional program with.
The advanced is really taking everything that we felt could make the beginner's class stronger and giving them the tools to do that. So I'm currently in the process of really creating a strong intuitive library. One of the biggest places that people tell me they struggle with medical intuition is like they can pick up a disease, but they don't know if it's early stages or if it's progressed or if it's, in full bloom. So we're going to teach them the traffic light system. We're going to give them like cards, literally like almost like the angel healing cards, but we're going to give them medical intuitive cards so they can use that to kind of practice tuning in and doing the scans and the reading, but also expanding their library. In the first module, we're really going to go deep into building intuitive library because so many people are getting the information, but they struggle with the interpretation. Like, what does that mean? So we're going to spend the first module really getting into that. And then we're going to go into depth into what you and I touched on, which is breaking different loops that have been running through family lineages. We're going to go more into the multidimensional works. A lot of people were asking me about like the shadow work and the entities and the lower energies and the cords and the attachments and how to remove curses and things like that that potentially have been affecting health, which is very common. Because there's a resurgence in magic, but there was magic for a very long time, which is a fun form of manifestation for light and for darkness. But we're going to talk about how to scan for different types of energy so you can pick that stuff up and be able to clear without being afraid of it instead of being caught up in this spiritual drama, or almost like a lot of people are like, oh, it's a curse, so we're going to be like, it's like, no, it's just like anything else. It's just a thought. A thought can be changed, right? But you put the wrong word on it and suddenly everyone thinks it can't be healed, just like cancer. It drives me mad. So we're going to be going deeper into that stuff. And we're also going to be going really into depth into more advanced belief systems, kind of like we were talking about a belief as a loop or a belief as a system instead of just a belief as a core wound, so that people can see how these systems are interacting, very much like the Dharma victim rescuer triangle, so they can see how, you know, how the momentum inside someone's suffering can change, but you can still deactivate their suffering by working through those.
Each thing you say, there's so much depth in it. So we'll have to just kind of a little bit skim through the modules, but get a sense for what people are doing. So module 1 is advanced scanning foundations to access the superconscious truth beneath what you're seeing.
Yeah, so a lot of the times we said like somebody, the three most common ways a psychic will tune into somebody is they'll tune in and they'll get an instant hit. So a part of the body will light up, or they'll feel something in their gut, and they'll immediately like have a thought or a feeling of this feels like, right? This feels like a gut problem. This feels like a heart problem. But it doesn't tell them what exactly is the gut problem, right? Is it candida? Is it cancer? Is it an autoimmune thing? Like, is it parasites? How do I figure out the difference between what that is? And that's why building the library is so important. The other layer to it that will be going into that module is whether or not you're picking up on someone's feelings, because people often have fears of disease. So, it's very common for me to work on people who, for example, do not have an illness, but they're afraid of it because their father had it or their mother had it, etc. So that comes up in scanning as well, like being able to pick up the difference between something having physically manifested or something that's just densely stuck inside the auric field. So that's what we're going to be going into in that module to start off with.
Module 2, nervous system and trauma tracking to help clients reprogram their trauma responses.
I love nervous system reprogramming, but what's happening at the moment a lot, and where a lot of healers are getting stuck, and you can see my frustration because my hands immediately went to my head. You can see my, oh my God, right? Is that people are confusing somatic release for the completion of a trauma, and they are not the same thing. For starters, a lot of people confuse dissociation with not having an emotional charge or an emotional attachment to a particular situation. It comes up very, very often, particularly in chronic illnesses, because freeze is a part of the nervous system response. And a lot of people don't know how to scan the nervous system for freeze. So we're going to begin going into not just fight, flight, freeze. We're going to be going into fawn as well, like the pleasing response, and how to be able to tell the difference between there being no charge and that not being like a core wound or a core trauma versus the nervous system being freeze, or it being in like freeze, functional freeze, or fawning inside a specific situation. And then the person can't really get to the end of the healing or get to the emotion that's buried underneath. The other one that really, really trips up healers, because we are by nature people pleasers, like most of us are rescuers and parentified children. Black sheep or golden children tend to be like the main archetypes in healers. We really struggle with the fight response. We are very good with flight, avoidance, we love, but when it comes to the fight response, we do not know how to hold space for other people's anger. And most disease, if not all disease, is caused by inflammation. And guess what? That's anger.
Very interesting points. Then module 3 goes into advanced belief systems work to identify survival patterns and support lasting healing.
That we kind of touched on when you said what's in it. So like really we're going to be going into beliefs as a system, and not like just belief systems as in the list of beliefs somebody has when they're incorrect, but like looking at the patterns we just discussed, like avoidance as a system, anger as a system. And so super like quickly, very quickly, but deep speaking wise, if we talk about archetypes as belief systems, we talk about rescuer, victim, perpetrator, very commonly all of us will swing between those 3 points inside the archetype, and those are 3 different belief systems. And what happens is most people will swing from a rescuer to victim and think they've completed a cycle without ever having addressed the persecutor. Some people it's the opposite. Some people swing from persecutor to victim, but the swing from one belief system to the other, despite the fact that they're still in a trauma belief system, leads them to think that they've completed a pattern that they have not completed. So what we're going to be really showing them is that variety is actually part of how the shadow keeps you in a loop. It likes to change the way that you're manifesting the trauma, so you think you're out of it, but you're actually still living in the same fear response. So that's what we're going to be going into in that one, so that you can really like collapse them and not keep, you're not like, why the hell does this thing keep coming back? If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So module 4, ancestral healing and epigenetics to disrupt patterns and trauma cycling through families, bodies, and timelines.
That's really what our experiential was about, and we're going to go more into depth into that in this module, is being able to really tell when something is ancestral and when something is theirs, teaching you guys how to separate their energy from the ancestral energy, but also changing those core vows to like ending the beliefs that it's their job to undo all the suffering in their family lineage to begin with, so they can really allow that divine energy to do the work. Also like giving them the initiations to working with slightly different multidimensional beings like the Lords of Time and the Lords of Karma, so that they can get this work done faster instead of just with guides or with angels. Like those beings are specific for this type of timeline work, so it makes it go a lot faster in clearing like up family lineages.
Module 5, multidimensional techniques to address autoimmune and complex illness.
So this is where the looping comes in. It's rare for it to be one core wound. It happens particularly around accidents or what I call like one hit wonders, just like a music single, where like somebody hits top of the charts as a one off. But most trauma is chronic cumulative trauma, and most healing is core wound healing. So what I'm going to be teaching you guys is how to do cumulative trauma healing, because most trauma, most illness is cumulative trauma healing. And that's really going to help you break those chronic illnesses, because chronic illnesses come from, especially autoimmune illnesses, come from chronic patterns, chronic energetic patterns as well. So we're going to be giving you the scripts to end that.
Module 6, working with pain as a portal to multidimensional memory to address its spiritual and emotional roots.
So this is about us really getting to the presence. So the key to pain is presence, and it's really hard. Like most people will do anything to avoid their own suffering and their own pain. But this is why it's a portal. Without presence to what's really going on at the level of the program, you simply don't have the key to create a new body. You're even if you start doing a lot of like positive visualization work, because you don't understand what you're like the momentum that's already behind what you're creating. It's almost like you see people do this a lot. They get better and then they go back, they get better and then they go back, because there's two competing patterns running. So only like really being present with the core patterns can you collapse the pain and really get to the other side. And that's why pain is the portal, because it forces you into a level of presence that otherwise we often wouldn't give.
Module 7, recognize the entities and spiritual attachments of illness to identify their purpose and restore free will.
Oh, this one's going to be fun. And you guys asked me for this one, so it's coming, but it's not something I've ever taught before. So this is unique to the Shift Network, and it's unique to you guys. I've taught spiritual warfare as a unique thing, but I've never taught it in medical intuition. So this is going to be fun. But from a spiritual perspective, diseases have a collective consciousness. Diseases have a soul and a spirit. And you can literally, this is how we related to them for thousands and thousands of years. You literally, we'll teach you how to bind them. We'll teach you how to remove those particular spirits. We'll teach you how to dialogue with those particular spirits so that you can uncover the contracts and agreements that they have with specific people. And this is the module where we really go into fear of evil. That's what allows any sort of entity or demonic energy, any sort of being with negative intention or chaotic intention to have access to your field, whether that's, through any kind of energy, is a belief that on some level you are darkness or there's something fundamentally bad about you, like the belief I am bad is what allows that energy to anchor in. And what you're really learning is your own innocence. It's the atonement. It's the undoing of self-judgment so that you can actually remember your own innocence. That's at the root of all the manifestations of, demonic energies and entities and stuff like that. But it's quite the wild, wild west on the astral plane. So we're going to have fun.
Since you're serious about this is an advanced program here, I mean, wow. Module 8, multidimensional healing to transform future health timelines and resolve ancestral and karmic patterns.
So that's the bit that we talked about we're going to go into how, particularly like with men and women, men through their sperm, women through their ovaries, we have a lot of other future parallel timelines and other people in the form of children, family members, parallel lives that are influencing our health, and where there are negative future outcomes that are potentially influencing health, success, etc. We're going to go into being able to journey to those future lives and end the particular pull that experience has on us, so that we can either not have to manifest that experience, prevention is the best cure, or so that we can not manifest it to that particular level of suffering that would have otherwise have occurred. That's what we're going to be doing in that module.
Module 9, explore healing beyond DNA, genes, and generational trauma to transform genetic imprints and inherited patterns.
So we're back to the reason this module is really important is that a lot of people have just shifted from working on the organs of the body to working on the DNA because that's what science is doing and it sounds really advanced. But from a metaphysical perspective, there are times where even inside the DNA, even energetically, you have to literally create new destinies and create new bodies because the timeline that you want does not currently exist. And that's what we're going into that module is going from almost like copying science or copying stuff to really moving into creating something completely new. And that's it's very important, particularly when you're working with female clients or injured clients, because women go through these periods of having completely new physiologies or new bodies, puberty, postpartum, perimenopause, menopause. These are completely, when you do a body scan, completely different physiological realities. So you're not working with the old body, you're working with a brand new body. And it's important to create from that vibration. And a lot of people, they will literally say to you, I just want to go back to my old body. So unless they're actually creating a new body, they really get stuck. And when you're working with male clients, it's a similar idea. They're still often trying to get back, but it comes up for them often around sports injuries, around testosterone production. They're still working from this past imprint instead of being able to be with the current creative imprint and what's best for their body now. So it's that idea of creating a new body instead of trying to go back to a healthy body we had previously.
Module 10, anchor emotional discipline and spiritual hygiene to prevent relapses and open to miraculous healings.
Okay, so this drives me mad, and this is why this module's in here, is that a doctor would not perform a surgery without sterilizing the room. Yet a lot of people are just getting lazy with their own spiritual hygiene, but also with the energetic hygiene when they're doing healings for their clients. And they don't understand the sheer impact. It's funny because my guys just sent like a wave of energy over me as I said that. They just don't understand how off balance that is throwing their work because they're just other, especially like my guides are really showing like, especially like with social media and with other energies coming, like there's so many energies coming through people's phones and laptops into their room. And then they're trying to manifest with all of these energies present and it just distorts their true heart's desires. But particularly when you're healing something like the body or disease or illness, it's just so important to learn how to repair your aura, how to clear your chakras, etc. You, especially if you're empath or a clairvoyant, the last thing you want is to be creating other people's diseases. Or like if you're like me and you're working on it, or a doctor or a nurse and you're working on sick person after sick person after sick person, if this is your divine life purpose, your energy has to be strong. You cannot be taking on energetic imprints in that way. And for that not to happen, you have to have good spiritual hygiene. And you have to have emotional discipline as well, because you can't just be picking up everybody else's emotions. You really have to be able to, and that's a skill. That's not just something that you learn by osmosis, and it needs to be practiced because your aura is a muscle. It's not a physical muscle, but it is a spiritual muscle. It expands and contracts just like the muscles in your arms do. And if it is weak, if you never use it, if you never expand it, or if you never expand it or contract it, it becomes rigid, just like your muscles do. It needs to be used. It's a use it or lose it scenario. So we're going to be really talking about that because it's really important if you want this to be your main line of work.
Module 11, elevate your practice with skills for mastering integrity and presence.
That is like the bitch of being a people pleaser in general, is that this work, if you want to get results, if you want to work miracles, the truth is required. And you can't tell somebody the truth and simultaneously lack integrity and presence. You can't go into healing sessions already having decided what's going to come up. And this is particularly important with medical intuition because there's so many books. And don't get me wrong, I'm the biggest bookworm you will ever see. I love, love, love books. I love metaphysical books in particular. But I swear to God, if you walk into a healing session thinking that somebody has cancer, therefore this is their belief system and this is who they are, and you already know their personality, you are going to create things that you don't want to create, and you're going to slow down that miracle by 1,000%. You have to walk into that room with beginner's mind. You have to walk into that room with deep presence for what is happening for the person sitting in front of you. And you have to let go of the things you've read and the things you think. And so to be able to be really there for them on their journey and what they're going through, no matter what illness they're facing. And the integrity and the presence are really difficult in very vulnerable situations. Like medical intuition by its very nature begs vulnerable situations. You will be sitting on hospital room floors, and you will be there at people's deathbeds, and you will be there. You will be the person that gets pictures, you know, in the middle of the birth or the C-section or the you know, when you go into this work, it's really beautiful, sacred, powerful work, and we're very lucky to do it. But by its very nature, it's vulnerable, and being honest at the same time as being kind. Because honesty, like the truth, is such a sharp knife. It cuts both ways. If you can't deliver truth with kindness and at the same time be honest, that's going to cause problems. So that's what we're really going to go into in that module, is how to really be true to what you're getting while still respecting the client's autonomy and their free will and their own journey, but you are not distorting the truth or coming out of alignment because you're people pleasing or whatever
Mhm.
trauma you have as a therapist.
Wow. And then module 12 goes into integration and mastery ceremony, map your journey of co-creation in a vision that feels exciting and sustainable. So I'll instead of going further into the modules, which have been amazing, like glimpse into what you're teaching, I also want to make sure we get a little bit of color into the previous program, since that's included for all the new people that are on ramping into this. So if you can share a little bit about the companion course. So it's called Healing the Root Cause of Illness with Medical Intuition. That's going to be bundled for all those who are new to your teachings and work, and that can either happen in before the 12-week advanced program starts, or in parallel. We recommend getting as much done as you can. But want to share more about some of the highlights in that?
Really, like, I think as a group, we were really figuring out, it felt like being given a Ferrari and trying to figure out how fast we could go. And that's what that the first course felt like. We really started off with going into depth into practicing body scans and removing like the imposter syndrome. The first few modules are really shaking off that fear of being your authentic self and of being that powerful and of having that kind of incredible gift. I think healing is still one of the gifts that shakes the ground when you walk on it. It's the kind of gift that stops people in their tracks if you're really in the energy of it, because healing's got that energy of wonder and it's got that energy of hope. That there's nothing that hits quite the same as, you know, someone being able to walk again, or someone being able to see again, or, you know, somebody that was going to die suddenly going to live. There's nothing that gives that kind of joy. And that's what we kind of really go into in those first three modules, is owning the power of that. So many of us have fears, right, about becoming arrogant or being imposters or getting it wrong. So we really clear that stuff, and we really went deep into being able to be who we really were and being able to clear things through whatever faiths were appropriate, and through really removing a lot of the religious trauma that came up. And then we really moved into um family systems, not in the ancestral way. Like there was a lot of inner child healing, and really a lot of domestic violence trauma came up for different people to heal. You could really see how much the inner child trauma had caused a lot of diseases, and was also holding people back and really stepping into their full power as healers. So you saw people really shake off that identity of like, I'm still a small hurt child, and really start stepping into, I'm really powerful and I can hold space for other people. And I'm allowed to say that I can heal things and do things. Because a lot of them were still like holding back on that level of, I'm not ready, I'm not prepared, I have to be perfect. So the perfectionism really melted away in the middle modules when we went deep into the family stuff and the karmic stuff. And then towards the end, you really felt that shift into, we can collapse timelines, we can heal more than one thing at once. You really felt people's excitement start to quicken. And we shifted from doing a lot of swaps to doing a lot more demonstrations, so people could really apply what they were getting in the transcripts very quickly. But you can the community in that group is on fire. I'm going to be on there as well for the next year, still helping you guys and meddling, because I love a vortex. I love a good vortex. So you'll see me in there helping as much as I can. But that's really what we were into in the first one. And you can see people's transformations, and they were so good at bringing in family members and people having emergency situations and things like that as well, and clearing them. That's actually the last thing that we added as a bonus to that class, was how to heal things like when people are unconscious or in comas or in accidents, how to do like really long distance quantum healings. So it really ended with a bang, if that makes sense. It was good fun.
Well, it's amazing the level of depth that you can go to, Skylar. It's such a blessing for all of us. I'll just summarize a few other things about this course since we've gone a little more in depth into this already. But so you get 12 90-minute live sessions with Skylar. You get recordings, both video and audio. There's word for word transcripts. There's weekly practices. You also get this community group, which is really buzzing with a lot of powerful sharings and teachings. There's also several bonuses on the page that are going to enhance your journey. Again, it's at multidimensionalmedicalintuition.com. There is a bonus that is called Aura Clearing Meditation. That's an audio teaching from Skylar. There's a PDF workshop that's more detailed on 365 Manifestation Power ebook. And there's a special bonus you get if you sign up by midnight tonight, which is video teaching from Skylar called Healing Your Hormones Masterclass. Skylar, want to share a little bit more about that Healing Your Hormones Masterclass folks get today?
Gosh, there's such a huge spiritual awakening happening around hormones. Just huge, both scientifically and spiritually. But that masterclass goes really deep into the shift between maiden archetype into mother archetype, and then from mother archetype into matriarch, because you see a lot of people exploring hormones from the communication perspective. Like, what are you not saying? What are you not feeling? But these hormones literally mirror shifts in like profound archetypes, both in the female line and in the male line. And it's very important, I think, for both male and women to understand those, not just those shifts, but the profound identity transformation that happens around them, and why, like how the hormones are speaking. So from a woman's perspective, testosterone represents like that divine father energy and that divine masculine, but then you have estrogen representing mother energy and that mother archetype, and then you have progesterone representing like the unborn child, and how they all work together, and how when they are not talking, hint hint, how many families are falling apart, right? How the body mirrors that. So you can see our hormonal chaos because our family systems are physically in chaos, and the way our hormones relate to each other is like a symphony, very much like the way relationships are. They're in constant communication, and it's quite beautiful if you scan a body for hormones, because you can literally see them changing from moment to moment in response to the environment. Like if you scan energetically, do like a scan on a mother that's kissing a child, you can see oxytocin exploding in the brain. Like they're waves of sound and color and energy, and it's very beautiful to see it moving like that. But it's very important for health, particularly for women, because women's hormonal health has been profoundly neglected, both by the medical profession and by the spiritual healers. And that's how that masterclass came about. And if women's hormones are neglected in the final season of life, in the matriarch, you see heart problems, you see bone density loss, you see severe inflammation, you see mental health issues that can be resolved, that can be undone simply by healing the hormones on that level. And it's so interesting, right, that estrogen drops off in, at the beginning, perimenopause into menopause, right when historically speaking we would be losing our mothers, and it represents the mother energy. And simultaneously we're losing our own identity as mother and shifting into the matriarch of the family. So we go into all that, and we go into how to heal it deeply, and also all the supplements and stuff inside that masterclass. So it's a really good egg. I really like it.
That's awesome. Well, that's just the bonus for signing up early, and it's clear like what a vast amount of understanding you have that's getting channeled into this advanced program. We've given all that. We've kept the investment very accessible. It's three payments of $347, where you save 10% when you pay in full, with one payment of $946, and that includes the full 7-week program as well. So there's 19 different modules, all the bonuses, all the community practice, all of that. Course begins on November 25th. It's going to run Tuesdays at 9 a.m. Pacific time, noon Eastern, which also works well for folks in Europe. even if you can't make the live times, you can still get the full value with the recordings, transcripts, and community. As you can tell, there's great testimonials about Skylar as a teacher, how much wisdom she holds, how dedicated she is, and what a great mentor. So you can see more on the page at multidimensional medicalintuition.com. And again, if you sign up by midnight tonight, you're going to get that Healing Your Hormones masterclass. Well, Skylar, you are just a revelation each time talking to you. There's so many layers. Anything you still want to share with folks who are considering doing the advanced program with you?
It's just that I'm really excited about this program. I remember literally when you invited me to do an advanced program and me thinking, oh gosh, like the expansion, like do we have space and time? And then when it's interesting, right? When you step into yes, the time and space appears, like that whole other reality appears. And we've not even started yet, and I can feel the joy and the freedom that's going to be created in this space. But also just to say, it's my first time working with the Shift Network, and I could not be more impressed. You guys are, as a team, as a community, you are so conscious, you are so loving, you are so kind. And I think that's what makes this kind of work possible.
Hmm.
And also that's what makes community possible. And I think a lot of people are wondering about that, not just the teaching, but what kind of community. And it's just out of this world. I think that opportunity to do it in real time while everybody's still active and present is a gift. So everyone's really welcome. We're going to have a whole lot of fun. And I'm so grateful, Stephen, for you for creating this space and this
Well,
community, and for reaching out in the first place.
it's a pleasure and honor. Thank you, Skylar, for all you've shared. Thank you all for joining, and look forward to see many of you in the course. And again, it's all at multidimensionalmedicalintuition.com. Thank you so much.